Okay, I'm just watching to make sure it's going through. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to start recording. All right. Good morning, everyone. I want to say thank you so much for joining us in Zoom as well as on Facebook and other live stream platforms. As you may or may not know, we're working in the nonprofit Utopia community on the census. We're taking a deep dive into the census and really trying to get a feel for not only the data, but to find practical uses for the census data. If you're anything like me, sometimes it could be a little overwhelming to go on the Census.gov and see all the data that are before you. And the purpose for today's meeting is to, really make sure that we're connecting the wonky side of us, so to speak, to the day-to-day work that we do. And many of us are serving nonprofits, we're serving our clients, we're serving our communities, and it's really, really important for us to get specialized data sets rather than data sets that were prepared by outside sources for general purposes. All right, so without further ado, I am going to share my screen. I'm going to give you a little bit of information about nonprofit Utopia, then talk to you a little bit about how we go about identifying our target areas, and then how we go about identifying our target people. So here we go. All right, so the title for this series is Using Census.gov in the Real World, emphasis on real world. My name is Valerie Leonard. I'm the founder of nonprofit Utopia. And in a few minutes, I will be turning this over to Ileana Serrano, and she is the data dissemination specialist for the U.S. Census Bureau. All right. And before we get started, I just want to give you a little information about nonprofit Utopia. Our mission is to develop the next generation of ethical nonprofit leaders, and we do this a number of ways, through live streams such as this. We do consulting, we do coaching, we have online courses, and an online store where you can buy books and other resources. And our vision is to strengthen the global nonprofit sector by providing training to up to 50,000 people between now and 2033, and this is hopefully going around the world versus locally, just staying local. And a little bit about myself. I have been in nonprofit management for more years than I care to admit, but I figure at this age it doesn't matter. It's been over 30 years, and I work with clients to help them to strengthen their own leadership capacity as well as the capacity of their organizations. I teach online courses in operations management at UIC. I also teach courses at Roosevelt in social enterprise. I have a master's of management from Kellogg and then a BA in economics from Spelman. So enough about me and the organization. If you want to learn more about us, you can go to nonprofitutopia.com. If you're interested in becoming a member, you can go to nonprofitutopia.mn.co. And again, as I alluded earlier, as nonprofit leaders, you're going to be called upon from time to time to describe your service areas. That could be either informally or that can be formally. But in most instances, if you're writing something down, say for a proposal or business plan, generally speaking, our first instinct is to go to a set of tables that have already been prepared by others for a very general purpose. And these typically have data that are requested of a number of people. If you're anything like me, sometimes it can be a little frustrating because you might want to drill down to your neighborhood level. You might want to drill down to a certain region of the city, right? Or you might want to do a certain region of the county, and those data are not readily available. So then you start looking at other people's research, or you might be looking at general tables and then trying to make, draw your own conclusions for your local community or service area based on what you see for the general public. And that works sometimes, but sometimes it doesn't. All right, so our purpose is to give you a refresher, one on describing your service area and your target. And forgive me if this is very basic for you. I know that you have significant experience, but the reason why we thought it important to go through this basic process, basic overview of the target and your service area is we want to give you some context that you're used to, right, on a daily basis to show you how the census can be demystified, so to speak, right, and applied to your day-to-day activities. So after I'm done, I promise you I won't be long, you'll get a live demonstration as to how to use the various data tables and tailor them to your own needs. And then in January, we will come back and we will have a more detailed workshop. It's going to be a hands-on workshop. It will be online. We'll do breakouts and you'll have an opportunity to work on an exercise where you can, go even deeper than we're going in this series. All right, so what do we mean by target? For our purposes, target populations are demographic or geographic groups that you want to serve, right? So we're either looking at people or we're looking at local community areas or your service area. These could be groups that would be affected by the change you're trying to bring about in the community. And the way we identify our targets, if we're just starting out, or we might want to refine our targets, give ourselves a reality check. We can look at census data for the specific geographic area that we want to serve, right? So we are looking at people, characteristics, and physical assets, right? So we can look at those data for at the census tract level, block group level, blocks, county, state, national, community area, a political geography, your neighborhood. And I want to say that not all of these geographies are preset. Ileana is going to show us how we can develop, say, for example, neighborhood is not considered a geography, right? But she will show us how to pull together various geographies or to create a semblance of a neighborhood, right? And then you could apply that same principle to creating a specialized region, et cetera, et cetera. So she's going to show you how to access the tables as well as the maps. And just as a reminder, typically when we describe our target and our target area, the area should be described within the context of the issue that you're trying to address. For example, if you're working with housing, your focus is going to be those data and geographies that will help you better understand the housing market. Youth development, same way, education, workforce development, etc. So you can really understand why those tables that are one size fit all don't always apply, because we're all doing different things. And even if we're all working in education, there still may be certain nuances that we want to bring out from the data. So you should also describe the who, the what, the where, and the characteristics of the target and the community. So you want to give someone who has never been there a good sense for the lay of the land. And then you want to indicate why you're serving your particular target or your community, and make sure that your rationale is grounded in evidence. And for our purposes today, the evidence is going to be the census data. And realistically speaking, the evidence may cover more than that depending on how complex your project is. But since our focus is the census, we're focusing on only the census data. So here is an example. The ABC Social Services Agency is located in the North Lawndale community on Chicago's west side. North Lawndale is about 3 miles west of Chicago's Loop. And according to the most recent American Community Survey, there were 34,794 people living in the community in 2019. The racial composition was about 86% Black, 9% Hispanic, 4% white, and 1% Asian and other races. About 23% of the residents did not finish high school, while about 32% either graduated from high school or got a GED. About 25% started college but didn't finish, and about 46% of the household generated $25,000 a year or less. And I believe this would put them below the poverty line. So almost half the community lives below the poverty line. Based on the demographics, we have decided to target adult learners who are interested in getting a GED and furthering their education. This could be through the trades or continuing their education for a college degree. It is our hope to increase the education level of local residents so that they can generate higher incomes and move out of poverty. All right, so I shared all of this so that when Ileana takes over, which will be within the next minute or so, we'll have some, some application that you're familiar with. So when she goes through the tables, it'll be a little bit more easy to relate those tables to a real life situation. And before we turn it over to Ileana, are there any questions? Are there any comments? All righty, and I want to welcome everyone who's in the room today. Because you have attended last week, we were able to come back and create, a presentation that we hope is a little, hope gives you more context and is more practical. All right, so Ileana, are you ready? And if so, please feel free to get started.
Okay, let me transition to sharing my screen. Let me
And
know.
okay, and I just noticed I am recording now, but the good thing is since we're live streaming on other from other places, we all is not lost. Anybody who wants the recording, you can find the recording on YouTube as well as the Nonprofit Utopia YouTube page, as well as the Nonprofit Utopia Facebook page and our Twitter page. All right, I'm sorry I had to interrupt. Okay.
Are you seeing the Census.gov splash page?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, real good. This is where we will start our search, if you will. First of all, I'd like to reintroduce myself. I'm Miliana Serrano. I am a data dissemination specialist with the U.S. Census Bureau, and I provide data support to our data users in Illinois and Indiana. And with that, it's basically we will walk you through navigating the tools that we have available online 24/7 so you can get at the data you are looking for. And we will help explain and bring clarity to the many different data sets that we publish through all of our Bureau surveys and programs. Because we not only do the decennial census, we also have ongoing surveys and also do the economic census that bring a lot of data to our communities. If you haven't been on our page, this is your launching pad basically. If you're looking for real simple data on a geography, large scale geography, you can use our Quick Facts tool to get a profile of that place, that county, zip codes if they are 5,000 and over, and tracks if they, again, they're 5,000 and over. But that's just for very basic whole profiles of that geography. What we're going to be doing today is I'm going to walk you through how you can identify a community or a neighborhood from Chicago, because that is not census geography, that's locally defined area. So we have to employ several sources to get at the geography or in identifying the area. And then we will take that data gathered from that source and use it in the data.census.gov extraction tool so that you can pull out the characteristics of that particular geography. So, um, because neighborhood data is not census geography, we always have to find alternative sources that can help define that. And my one to go to source is basically the City of Chicago data portal, and they have boundaries of the neighborhoods and identified by census tracts. Okay, tracts basically are collection geographies that are relatively stable and they are defined by their features, visible features. But one has to be cognizant of the fact that sometimes these census tracts will cross over the neighborhood boundaries. So, one key thing that you need to consider is whether you want to include or exclude a census tract from your community profile. For instance, we have here the defined area for Austin. Hey, as you can see, Austin is not just defined in this little yellow square, but you've got North Austin and South Austin. So when you're targeting an area, you need to be specific. Is it the whole Austin neighborhood, or is it specifically South Austin or North Austin that you are targeting? This map does give you the yellow is the boundary, and again, the task tracks are defined by street features, which is relatively easy. And if you click on them, it will give you the track number. Okay. So if you are going to be doing a profile of the Austin neighborhood, you're going to have to collect all of these track numbers. Okay, because Census.gov does not that we don't collect them by neighborhood. It is just the entire city of Chicago by tract. So you will need to collect those numbers. And if you look at the map closely, you will see that there's some tracts that, for instance, this one here, it's in another area and it is split by the neighborhood boundary. So you will need to consider whether you want to bring that tract into your profile or exclude it from your profile. Okay. Majority, if you scroll in closer, you can see that these are housing, but we don't know if these housing are occupied or not. Are they businesses or are they residential? That's something you will need to explore to make that decision of whether you want to bring that tract in or not. So you collect all of these census tracts and then make a notation of these that are split for your consideration. And this is one way that you start building your geographic profile. You have your north boundary, which, and then your south boundary, your east and west boundary. This is important to help identify the tracts that are within those constraints. So this is how you get your geography, and then we go to our data extraction tool. Okay, so we're at Explore Data Main. And we also have another tool that can help you in that endeavor, if you will, in that search. But I'll see if we have time today to explore that tool after we do our exercise. So basically what you're going to do now, since you know your geography, your tracts, we're going to go to our advanced search. Okay. And selecting our geography, as you scroll down, you can see the different geography or geographic selections available. And as you scroll down, you notice that there is no community or neighborhood link. So that's a first indication that Census Bureau does not have that as a defined geography. So our recommendation is to use tract information to compile for your geography. So we select our tract, and then it's going to ask you what state is that tract in, and it will ask you what county are those tracts in. Okay, and now it's bringing a list of all the census tracts within Cook County if you want that all-inclusive report or your individual census tracts. And since the collection that we are going to be looking at are in the 2500s, I'm not going to keep scrolling down and down. I'm going to use the glass here, the search glass, and then I'm going to type in census tract, and I'm going to start with 25. Okay, it starts listing all of the census tracts that begin with 25, and then you start selecting the ones that are in that geography, that neighborhood area. I kind of did it beforehand so it wouldn't be laborious, but I identified by clicking on all those squares and making sure that I had the bulk of it. I didn't do the tracks that were split, so that because that would be different decisions that need to be made. Census does not split a tract. So when you are looking at a tract that's between two neighborhoods, that's where I said decisions have to be made. You have to look at what's in there to see if you want to include it or exclude it. So I am going to do select 2808, 09, come down to 15. Keep going down. And then you see, as an explanation, you see these that have 01, 02. This is an indication that this particular tract, 2521, at one point was a whole tract. But because of growth, it was renumbered because that tract itself was split, was carved out. So that carving that met that population threshold now has O1 and an O2 extension. So we're going to click on both of them and 23. And here you see some more that are 25. Not all of it is, what do I want to say, numerical. They bounce around quite a bit, so you have to be patient with the tool as you explore the tracks that you are compiling for your profile. 17, let's see. I'm going to do this many right now so we have an idea because there's plenty
Mhm.
more to compile for the Austin neighborhood, okay?
Right,
It's just
right.
an example to get you going on the data search. So I have
Mhm.
my geography all set. What I like to do is I like to view what I have selected to make sure that I am in the right place. So I just click search. It automatically starts to bring in decennial information, and I'm going to look at the population so I can get a map, a visual of the area that I have selected. Okay, so right now, all you're getting is basic redistricting data for all the tracks that we have selected. But I want to view it. I want to view my geography. So I'm going to click on the map top at the top, and it's going to render an image of what I have selected. I'm going to push out a little bit. Mind you, you have to work with the map, and it's scrolling in. You start to see a little bit of coloration here. Those are the tracks that you have selected, or in this example that I have selected. And you see that they're not all inclusive, I should say, of Austin. I just selected a few. But here is
Mhm.
basically the neighborhood, okay, the Austin neighborhood. And you can go back and reselect those, or because they weren't all selected, I'm like, oh, I missed quite a few. I can do select to include them. I want that one. I want this one. And
Hmm.
then all of these, as you're clicking and including them in your list, it is updating your table. It is
Ah,
updating your legend, okay? And you can continue if by mistake you included this one, you're like, oh, I don't want that one. That one's split. I got to examine it a little bit further. You
mm,
can deselect it, okay? Do we have any questions thus far?
okay. I noticed that you're looking at race as a filter.
I
Um,
just used that, Valerie, as an example to pull up a map. I
mhm.
didn't select my topic yet. I just
Okay.
pulled that so we can get a visual of the map, the track map that we have selected to represent Austin. Okay.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I was just wondering what the different shades of blue represented. I didn't know if this was African Americans. Um,
It's defaulting to population. Okay.
mhm.
Population.
Of one race. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so this is where knowing your variable will render a table with pertinent data. Right now, it's just all inclusive basic, just and I use that as an example so we can get a visual of
Mhm.
Austin.
Got it.
Mhm. Okay, so now I have, let me do 18. 18 seems to be all inclusive. But we have mostly Austin. I left these out because they need further explanation. And
Mhm.
so now, since I have my geography, you can, grab a picture of this in future if you want to retain this or include it in a report to highlight the geography that you are including in your research, your plan, your grant, your whatever. You can grab a
Mhm.
picture of this. But we're going to go back to our table, okay? And when we look at our topics, this is where you can start selecting the information that is relevant to your endeavor. So right now, under people, you can look at population, counts and estimates projection. from the files, and you can get official population totals for that area. I'm going to go and select it and say search. It's going to take a few moments to run it because that was a lot of
Mhm.
geography that was selected.
I can't
And if
thank
you
you enough.
notice,
Okay, I'm sorry.
no, sorry, as you notice, it's got a decennial data release, the redistricting data, and P1 includes your population by race. Okay, so you have different iterations that you
Hmm.
can look at. Okay, so on this one, it's a P1 table, so it's your population by race, and this is where you have your different categories that you can section out, if you will. Okay, so if you need decennial data on the Black African American population in tract 2506, you have it right there. Okay, and you can go across all the tracks. If you want it by some other race, white African, and you can go down to the other iterations, 3 races, 4 races, okay, and 6 races or more. So this is very detailed information captured from the questionnaire on how the residents of this particular tract responded to those questions. Okay.
Okay. Does this get totaled up at the end, on the far right, or is that something you have to do yourself after you
Yes,
download the data?
yes, we give the data by tract, and because there can be so many different combinations, we give it
Hmm.
to you by tract. And what you can do is, if this is a table that you want to work with, okay, you can download it, and it will allow you to download as a CSV file, which you can then save to an Excel. Or you can do an Excel download right away. Take a few. Mine goes to the lower left.
Hmm.
Still pulsating. Let's see. Okay, should be done. These are your data notes. Okay, so you go to the bottom, the data tab, and here you have your data.
Hmm.
Okay, which you can clean up. Like if you don't aren't interested in the other iterations towards the bottom, you can delete them, and then you can add a formula to your Excel spreadsheet to total at the end. All of these at total, and then
Hmm.
or at sum, I should say, and it will total those for you.
Got it. Thank
Okay,
you.
you're welcome. So that is basically gathering that information and collecting the tracks for then you being able to get at the data that you're looking for. Under customize, one thing that I do want to encourage your data users is under the topics. Right now, this one is right, what do you call, allocated to this particular table, but I'm going to open another tab, show you another example.
And if anybody has questions, feel free to ask. You can jump right in or you can post in chat. And if you are watching on social media, feel free to post questions in the chat, and I will be checking periodically to see if there have been any questions. Or you
Okay,
can join
so
us in Zoom.
yeah, in our previous example, we defined the neighborhood Austin by tract. We collected those tract numbers and plugged them in and started pulling information from the current decennial census, okay, our redistricting data. When you're looking at using population numbers, you will need to refer to the decennial census or population estimates program. When you're looking for characteristics of those particular tracts, you will be looking at the American Community Survey. The Decennial does not have characteristics data. We will be releasing some detailed tables from the decennial in terms of household composition, and that will come out in 2022 next year. But when you're looking at those variables that Valerie mentioned in terms of youth, which you're looking at age brackets, education, that will come from ACS. Workforce development, you're looking at employment and unemployment and where these residents work in what industry. That comes from ACS. The characteristics of who, what, where, you've got that coming from the ACS. If you remember the questions that were asked on the decennial, they were basic, race, relationship, and housing tenure. It did not ask anything about employment, income. It did not ask anything about how much you pay for rent at the house, the highest education, GED attainment, none of that. That comes from the ACS. We used to ask that in decennial, but after 2020, ACS launched in 2005, and now we have it on an annual basis. So, under the topics is what I encourage you to explore because each of these will have subtopics. Let's say for education, you have basic education data, educational attainment, or school enrollment. If you hit one of these boxes, it will not allow you to search further. These topics that are not boxed, you have further selections. So you have school enrollment. What type of school? Is it a charter school? Is it public school? Is it private? You have that, or vocational training. You can look at that data by tract. Under employment, you've got a lot of categories: employment, class of worker, commuting, okay, industry and occupation, work experience. What's that about? Now you can look at employment history, part time or full time, permanent or temporary employment. You've got those choices. So each of these categories under the topics tab have further variables that you can explore. With health, disability, fertility, health insurance, and people ask, well, what's fertility all about? Why is it important? And that is important because you've got you can look at the sequences of births, the time in between each births, how many births. So if you're dealing with young mothers or young target group, population group, fertility is something that we need to look at. But if you look at expenses, now you can look at business expenses or expenses with regards to healthcare. And like I said, all of these have a lot more underneath them, and it's worth exploring. For those that want to do a deeper dive into your race and ethnicity, you have these selections. These are your basic race categories, but then further down, you can look at other ethnicities. Okay, if you want to delve into the Hispanic or Latino, it will allow you to go at the specific, okay, or the detailed. Right here, if I'm interested in Cubans in those tracked areas, I can select it and you can find data if it's available because it could be that I selected that, but there aren't any Cubans living in those tracks. So you've got additional topics that you need to explore, okay, and see
Okay,
how that plays out in your table. So that,
question.
yes,
We've got a question from Elisa.
yay.
Elisa, did you want to ask your own question?
Not a problem.
Okay.
Uh, I generally don't need to pull out information on a track by track basis. And the way I normally need to pull data is I run a business and I need to be able to look at the trading area from a site. So let's say I want to collect data, let's say from a 1, 2, and 3 mile radius of a particular site. So there's an address that I would plug in. Are you able to still do that information through the census?
You're looking at economic data from our business surveys. So,
No, I'm still looking for general population
oh,
data. So
population.
yes, it's still population data, but I don't want to pull all the tracks that I don't need all the tracks. I just need a mile, one,
This
two,
tool, the
three.
mapping tool,
It's generally how real estate people would look at a census data.
you can use the select icon and pinpoint where you want to start your mileage and then do a polygon, okay, based on what it is. But when using the polygon, remember, even when you're using the radius, there's another tool that we can use to generate like a bullet or a donut, and it will give you that radius. But when you do that, just be cognizant of the fact that when you pull that radius circle or polygon, wherever those lines hit, it will take in that geography. So even if it touches the corner and that's the end of your 5 mile radius, it will pick up that entire tract.
Well, where are you
Okay.
putting in the radius? Is something
There's
showing it?
another
I
tool.
can't.
Yeah, no, there's another tool. I'm just illustrating that even in that
Oh,
other tool that you use, and you can, contact me and we can walk through that exercise for you.
okay.
But even if you use the other tool, when you branch out or scroll out to cover that 5 mile radius, if
Yes,
that border, that perimeter border hits just the
I got it.
corner of
That's why
one
I
of the
wouldn't want to use this because I would want to stay within a 5 mile radius. So I'm pulling the appropriate population number. So I need something specific, not as, again, this is going by tracks again. So,
well, yeah, all of our tools use census geography, so it will apply. The other tool, I'm going to see if I can open it up and give you an illustration because I'm not sure if I'm communicating the right concept with regards to what am I doing?
So even if you do a polygon, it's going to come out in census tract. Like if your
Yes.
polygon, it won't, suppose your shape is a circle. Can you do a circle shape? And it just picks up what's in that circle?
Not with data.census.gov. We do have
Mhm.
another tool that's called On the Map that can help you identify. Um, Let me go here. Data tools that can help you identify an area that will
mhm.
allow you to do a radius. Data.census.gov, that mapping feature, I don't believe, at least I don't know that
Mhm.
it's able to do that. Okay.
Okay.
But I use this tool, and this is basically a workforce analysis tool, but you can use it to define your 5 mile radius and then go from there. And again, it uses census geography. So if your 5 mile radius is going to pop out, you're going to get your tracks. And then if you set your label to show your block groups or individual blocks, it will do so as well. But
Okay.
that's where you have to understand that concept that the track that 5 mile perimeter border hits,
Got you. So
it
the
will
track may still be, even the information that I've already gotten may have covered out areas outside of a 5 mile radius.
right.
Got
Okay,
you.
So if you do block groups, would you get a little bit more accuracy as opposed to, well, if you
Probably.
use, yeah,
Well,
blocks rather than census tracts?
Um, every geography has a purpose. If you
Hmm.
want to really drill down
Hmm.
into a specific geography, that's where your block groups will come into play to get your characteristics data.
Okay,
With
got it.
the decennial census, you can drill down to the block level. Okay, that's how specific or drill down or low level geography is available for your analysis. Okay, so with this, we can do just processing a general profile, but over on your base map, whoops, sorry, I just zoomed in. You can do a, what do I want to say, a donut, and it will take you out to your distance. All right. And again, because this is census geography, wherever it hits, it's going to pull in that information. Mm.
Mm.
So, like I said, for the individual that wants to do that donut or that
Mm-hmm.
5 mile radius or whatever, you call me or send me an email, and then we'll walk through the usage of this tool. Because there are a couple of particulars. I just clicked on to get it visual, but there are different labels and things that you need to set up before you do that. Okay.
Thank you.
You're
Okay, a
welcome.
question. Yeah, a question about that report on the side. It looks like you can download a detailed report and get a snapshot as to what the demographics are.
Yeah, yeah, depending on your analysis, let's say
Mm-hmm.
right here, this is the border of this map,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And it's bringing in workforce information. I didn't give it a selection, so it's just giving me
Mm-hmm.
basic. But if I wanted to do a different selection, it will allow me to select what grouping from that workforce area I want to look at. So I can look at people who are making a certain amount of money. I can look at a certain age group, and I can also look at the area that they're working at. So right here, this is where you can draw your polygon. Okay, so say Austin is in this area or up here. I can start here, 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 and here. Okay, there's my area. All right, and you can do a 5 mile, or which one is it? The donut. I can't find the donut right here. Oh, here it is. Donut or simple ring. Okay, you're going to say 5. And depending on where you're at, it will give you that 5 mile radius that you can pull out. If you
That's
donut, you
amazing.
can do 1 or 5, and it will help you, identify the area. Plume, those are really pretty awesome characteristics or editing tools that you can use with this. Let me go back to those selections. Come back.
This is powerful stuff.
This is when you come into the tool and you identify your geography, it's going to ask you to perform an analysis. Okay, these are the areas that you can look at. So you can look at your labor market. These are your selections. Okay, area comparison. You can compare it to places, zip codes, county subdivisions. Distance and directions will give you where the workers are coming from and where they're going, where they're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Destination. This is the one that's really fun, the inflow outflow. It shows you, and I want all jobs. It will show you basically how many people come into Chicago to work, how many people go out of Chicago to work,
Wow.
and whoop, sorry, just moved it. So here you have the information. This is how many people come into Chicago to work. This is how many people work and live in Chicago. And this is how many people travel out to work. It could be to Wisconsin, Indiana, further. And with that other detail, you can find the distance. Where are these people that are going out of Chicago to work? Where are they going? These that are coming into work, where are they coming from? Okay, you can do those distance analysis, and on the right hand side, you have data that you can drill down into and highlight.
Okay.
Okay, and there you go.
So is this the
Uh,
donut you were referring to, or is this another visualization? It's a different thing. The green arrow, the circle, is that the donut you were talking about?
No, this one is the inflow output. We have those drawing
Mm,
tools. You can do it.
okay,
Yeah, that's different. There are a couple of things that you need to set up before you do that. And like I said, we're
okay.
kind of hitting on the hour marker, so this is
Hmm.
needs more exploration.
Okay.
And we could do a session on this later on if you like. But right now,
This is awesome. I'm so sorry. I got lost in this. I lost track of time. I didn't realize how close to 11 it was.
so it's just to show you that once you have a good resource, and that another thing that I forgot that I just see right now, this is saying Census Tract 2010. And if you're doing a time analysis of a neighborhood, it's important to make sure that the geographies are consistent because every decennial we tweak these tracts or blocks or counties. Well, not counties, they're fairly stable, but tracts we do tweak. Like in the listing that we saw on our geographies for those tracts. Okay, we saw some that were 2502.1, 25.02.2. That means that one of these tracks was split in two and given two designations. So 2010 geography is what we are looking for. Pretty soon, when these maps, and they're probably already out there, they haven't been updated in the city of Chicago, you do need to look at, if you're doing time analysis, that the geography is consistent. Because if you're talking about 2502 in 2010, but now in 2020 it's 250201 and '02, you've got three different geographies to look at, and you want to make sure that you're representing the right area. Okay, and going back to 2000, so on and so forth. And we also have another tool that can help you do that. But again, that's another session. But you identify using a good source your geography, and then you take that geography, that census geography, and then apply it to your data extraction. And then you can go and look at that, the educational attainment of the individual tracks. You can look at the type of employment, the industry and the occupations. You can look at age brackets. You can look at um, just a plethora of characteristics that are available.
Hmm.
Okay.
Okay, awesome. And you can do this for several different geographies. You can do this for what, state, legislative district, and all that other stuff, right?
Geography, this we've got a lot of geographies that you can look at data for. Nation, region, division, state, county, tract. You've got your block groups and your block. You also can look at it by zip code tabulation area, which is different than down towards the bottom. It's got a 5-digit zip code selection. This selection
Hmm.
here, most people would go for thinking, oh, that's my zip code. I'm going to find data for my zip code. But the 5-digit zip code data selection here indicates that you are only going to get business data from our economic
Mm.
survey. Okay.
Ah, okay, got it.
To get um, characteristics data, you need to go to the zip code tabulation area. Okay,
Hmm.
and it's again the 5-digit, but tabulation area, this is where we collect and tab the data for that zip code. Another thing on zip codes, we have to remember that we receive these file from the US Post Office every 10 years. So when they give us that file, it's locked in for that decade. In that decade, okay, from 2020 to 2030, some of those postal delivery routes can change. They can grow, they can be collapsed, new ones created. The post office updates their file, we do not. So that's another thing the challenge when you're looking at zip code tabulation area. A lot of people think, oh, I can get data from my zip code and I'll know my neighborhood. However, if you know your zip codes and you find it in the city of Chicago or USPS, that zip code can meander through several neighborhoods. So you think you're in Austin, but you can be in Humboldt Park. Okay,
Mhm.
so something to consider when you're looking at zip code tabulation area. And it's also a good idea that if you are looking at it, make sure that you visualize it. Select your zip code, put it in your map tab, and look at it to
Mhm.
make sure it covers the geography you're looking at. But yeah, you can get school district data, congressional, state legislative data, and traffic voting. There's a lot of American
Oh,
Indian,
wow.
Metro. Yeah, a lot of different
They,
geographies that you can get at.
they have really built this out over the past 10 years.
Haven't they? Yeah, it's a lot.
This is awesome stuff. Are there any questions? I just want to read this message from Brooke. She said she had to leave early for another meeting. She said thank you, and this was great. So, all right. Are okay. Are there other questions? And Ileana, we got a comment from someone who was watching on Facebook. He sent me an email. Hold on. If you got just a minute, I'll read it to you. Valerie, for your census series in October, have you done a session on the history of community mapping, including the history of Maptitude software, which I recall goes back into the 1990s when HUD provided a free version? I know Pierre Clark used it in other software by 1997 to 1999, perhaps before. Norman says Maptitude is currently used extensively by redistricting parties. Dan Basile began using mapping software by the 1980s and 90s, I believe, and focused on building block the CPS, elementary school enrollment and service data. Perhaps a session on the history of community mapping and use of census data from the ground up. I don't know if that's something you would be interested in.
Well, I
Ilya?
think I'm going to have to defer on that one because that is a geographer's specialty.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if we have staff that can do a history of geography or mapping, census
Okay.
mapping, geography, so on and so forth. That will take some investigation because
Okay.
that's
And
highly specialized.
yeah, and maybe I could contact a vendor to do a demonstration or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
One of
I heard of Maptitude, and I think a couple of our geographers were familiar with it, but they have since retired. So I have to dig on that one to see if anybody's
okay.
still, you know,
Yeah. Yeah,
who
that would
can
be
use that area.
awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
if we could do a joint one, with the Census Bureau and one of the vendors that you have, one of the preferred vendors,
Hmm.
like a Maptitude. That's something for the future. I
Right.
can always think of something, and Leighton is worse than I am. You can tell from the length of his question. He's a retired attorney, so he never met a word he didn't like. I should have been an attorney because I never met a word I didn't like. All right.
We can explore it. Like I said, we can explore the possibility of that.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, because we could look at different ways that people can do mapping. I could imagine that Elisa could use, Maptitude or understand how it works and work with someone who does use it. All
Oh,
righty. Are there questions or comments? I know we're beyond an hour, and I just want to say thank you, ladies, for for sticking through to the end. I want to say thank you again for the questions that you asked last week, because that helped us formulate this week. Was this useful? And maybe I'm putting you on the spot.
It's Elisa again. I think it's useful. I think I'm still not knowing enough about what I can do with the data. I may know how to get the initial data. I see that there's a lot of work to pull together, even what I would want to do for my business or even for nonprofits. It's a lot of work to pull this. I have to then evaluate, do I go back and just spend the money?
Right. And have somebody,
Yeah, but that's the thing. Because this is a lot of work.
Right. And we're going to look at the tables that you sent us to make sure that we, at least get to your backyard before
Yeah,
this.
I think we can get there by either I think she said on a block level. But again, that's, if I'm looking at a 1 mile radius, okay, that's great. But 5 miles, again, it just seems like a lot of work when I'm used to just requesting what I want and that's it. It's here.
Right.
Yeah.
It gives you.
Yeah. So this gives options. I would love to be able to do it.
Yes. It gives you an appreciation for what you're asking for, if nothing else.
Oh yeah, now I understand why it costs so much.
Right. And two, I know there's no way we can do everything. I know that the Census.gov has a number of videos that you can look at, and a lot of resources too. If you're somebody who cares about data like that, I'm one of those people. I would be patient enough to sit through, but the average person could care less.
We might need to pay you to do it, right?
I know people who are better than I, but I don't mind learning that stuff. I know a little bit. I'm not an expert. I'm teaching myself slowly but surely by watching the video. And then I always listen very carefully to Ileana.
Well, like you said, Valerie, it helps the public appreciate what it is that they're getting. And it is a lot of education, if you will, because you have to use the data responsibly. And in order to do so, you have to know where it's coming from. Is it reliable? That there are no agendas attached to the data,
Right.
that it's equitable. And when you use the data, you're going to get questions. Well, where is it coming from? And is it a survey or 100%? And who you polling? And what's the universe? And yada, yada, yada. We are transparent in what we do and how we do it. And all of the technical documentation, the methodologies are all online. So people do have to invest a little bit of time in order to understand what they're getting, because there are always questions on geography. Well, why can't I do this and that? Well, that's because of the structure. And why can't I get this or that on data? Well, that's because of the questions we ask. We don't ask outright questions in our survey. They have to be congressionally approved. We have to test them in terms of the wording and understanding before we actually put it out in the field in a survey. So there's a lot of research, vetting, validation, if you will, and approval process that one has to go through. Our disclosure review board has to look what that risk is to the respondent. So we have to not only provide good quality data, but protect the information of those people that are providing that data. So, that's why people pay through the nose to get at the data when they go to a company.
Yeah, because most people don't want to do it. All right.
It's a lot of time.
We'll be back on Friday to talk about how the census can be applicable to strategic planning. So again, we're going to start out with, just a basic overview of strategic planning, and then Ileana will go through some, some relevant data sets that we might consider pulling. And Elisa, we're going to also look at what you have and see if we can pull some lessons learned for your benefit.
Thank you.
I know with the business planning, it'll come in handy. Maybe, do you ever do SWOT analyses? Or you're basically in real estate? Okay.
No,
So,
I've done SWOT analysis before, so that would be interesting.
okay. All right. So yeah, just thinking of ways we can use the census to help support part of the SWOT analysis, as well as, looking at a scan of the environment and that kind of thing. We realize that, there'll be other data sets that will be needed regardless, but we're just going to focus on the census data.
Okay, sounds good.
Righty. Well, thank you, ladies, for hanging out. And Ileana, thank you for bearing with us. And I'll say, I'm saying us generally, I'm saying me. Thank you for bearing with me. I'm hiding behind the group. Thank you so much.
Valerie, it's always fun. It's always fun doing these for you.
Okay. All right.
All right. Well, I have to go. Ladies, thank you. And Alisa, let me know, and we'll get that information for you, okay?
Okay. Now, do you ladies have each other's contact information? If not, I can send it and make
Yes,
sure.
if you could do that, that would be great.
Okay.
I'm sure I could get her email off of one of your emails, but it'd be great if you sent it.
Yeah, I'll do it. See, Elisa's so much a boss. She talks like a boss. I'll get it to you as soon as we get off. All right.
No problem.
All
All
right,
right.
ladies, a
Okay.
pleasure. Have a good day.
All right. To both.